45 minutes. That's how long 11-year-old Liam Carter stood chest deep in water cold enough to stop a grown man's heart in under 15. That's how long his thin arms held a 2-year-old girl above the surface while ice crystals formed on his eyelashes and his lips faded from blue to gray to something closer to white. That's how long he whispered a lullaby his dead mother once sang him, promising a child he'd never met that he would not let go. He kept that promise. The doctors would later call it impossible. The medical journals would use words like unprecedented and physiologically inexplicable. 17 specialists would examine his case and failed to explain how a malnourished homeless child survived conditions that should have killed him 3 times over. But what happened next, what 1,500 Hells Angels did when they learned his story, didn't just make medical news. It rewrote what an entire nation believed about family, sacrifice, and the throwaway children society pretends not to see. The morning of February 17, 2019 began with silence. Castle Rock, Colorado. 6:14 in the morning. The sun hadn't cracked the horizon yet, and the world existed in shades of gray and deep purple, the kind of pre-dawn stillness that made Liam feel safe in the only way he knew how. Invisible. He'd learned to love invisibility. 3 years on the streets had taught him that being seen meant being vulnerable. Being noticed meant being chased, questioned, reported. So he'd mastered the art of disappearing, of existing in the spaces between, of becoming part of the urban landscape that people's eyes slid right over without pause or recognition. His current hiding spot was beneath the Wolfsburg Road Bridge, a concrete shelf above the South Platte River where the water's constant whisper masked any sounds he might make in his sleep. He had lined the space with cardboard and a sleeping bag he'd found in a dumpster behind a sporting goods store. Slightly torn, missing its zipper, but warm enough if he curled up tight and didn't move too much during the night. The river ran 30 feet from his spot. It hadn't fully frozen despite a week of temperatures in the teens, and the sound of the current against the ice shelf was the closest thing Liam had to a nightlight. It kept him company in ways human voices hadn't for almost 3 years. He was 11 years old. He weighed 73 pounds, and in approximately 4 minutes, he would do something that defied every survival instinct his brutal life had taught him. The pickup truck appeared on the bridge at 6:18. Liam heard it before he saw it, engine running too fast for the icy conditions, that particular high-pitched squeal of tires losing and regaining traction on black ice. He sat up in his nest of stolen blankets, heart rate spiking because 3 years of hypervigilance had wired his nervous system to treat unexpected sounds as threats. The truck, a silver Ford that investigators would later trace to 23-year-old Tyler Ashford, hit the guardrail at approximately 51 miles per hour. The barrier held for almost a full second. Metal screamed against metal. The sound cut through the morning air like a blade, sharp and terrible, and final. Then something gave, something buckled, and the truck was airborne. Liam watched it fly. Time stretched the way it does in moments of absolute crisis, each frame distinct, examinable, frozen in the amber of traumatic memory. He saw the headlights cutting arcs through the gray morning air, saw the spray of ice and snow exploding from the impact point, saw the dark mass of the vehicle rotating slowly, almost gracefully, as it cleared the bridge's edge. The ice broke with a sound like a rifle shot. The truck punched through nose first, headlights still glowing beneath the surface like dying eyes. For a moment, maybe 2 seconds, the cab stayed above water. The engine hissed and steamed. Then Liam heard the crying, "Hi." Unmistakably a very young child, and something else. Movement on the bridge above. A figure climbing through the torn guardrail. A man, stumbling, clearly drunk, looking down at the sinking vehicle for exactly 3 seconds before turning. And running away. The crying grew louder, more desperate. The sound of a small human realizing she was alone and the water was rising and no one was coming to help. Liam was in the water before he made the conscious decision to move. Later in interviews and testimony, in the endless retellings that would follow, people would ask him what he was thinking in that moment. What calculation had he made? What heroic impulse had driven him? The truth was simpler and more complex than any answer he could give them. He wasn't thinking anything. He heard a child crying and he moved. His body took over, driven by something deeper than thought, something that lived in the part of him that remembered what it felt like to be small and terrified and completely alone, to scream for help and have no one come. He couldn't not go. The water hit him like a fist made of razors. Every nerve in his body screamed at once. The cold wasn't temperature, it was violence, an assault, A full body shock that drove the air from his lungs and made his muscles seize. The river was chest deep here, maybe 4 feet, but the current was stronger than it looked, and the bottom was slick with algae-covered rocks that shifted in on and rolled beneath his feet. The truck was sinking faster now. The cab tilted forward, water pouring through the shattered windshield in a steady torrent. Liam pushed forward, his teeth already chattering so hard he thought they might crack. His hands, bare because he'd lost his only gloves weeks ago, went from painful to numb in seconds. But the child was still crying, still alive, still waiting for someone to come. He reached the truck as the cab went under. Through the rear window, he could see her, a toddler, maybe 2 years old, strapped into a car seat. Her face was red from screaming. Her tiny hands were reaching toward him, toward anyone, toward hope, wrapped in tattered clothes and desperation. The door wouldn't open. Water pressure had sealed it shut. Liam made a fist and punched the window. The glass didn't break. His knuckles split open. Blood swirled into the dark water, black in the pre-dawn light. But the pain was distant, theoretical. Something happening to someone else's hand. He hit it again. Again. On the fourth strike, using his elbow this time, the window cracked. A spider web of fractures spreading from the impact point. On the fifth, it shattered. Water rushed in. So did he. The car seat's buckle was a nightmare of frozen plastic and panic. His fingers weren't working right anymore. Stiff, clumsy, belonging to someone else's body. But he kept trying, kept fumbling, kept whispering words he didn't know he remembered. I've got you. I've got you. I'm not going to let go. The buckle released. He pulled the girl, Emma, her name was Emma, though he wouldn't learn that for hours, from the seat and pushed back through the window, lifting her above the water. She was so small, so light, her arms wrapped around his neck with surprising strength for someone so tiny. Now he just had to get out. Remember this moment, remember the cold, the weight of a child in arms that were already dying, because what happens next will stay with you long after this story ends. Liam turned toward the shore. Emma clutched against his chest, and that's when he understood the full horror of his situation. The river wasn't wide, maybe 40 feet from bank to bank. It wasn't deep. The water came to his chest, Emma's head well above the surface as long as he kept his arms raised. But the banks weren't banks. This stretch of the South Platte ran through a flood control channel. The sides were concrete walls, nearly vertical, rising about 4 feet from the water's surface to ground level. Under normal circumstances, metal maintenance ladders were embedded every 100 yards or so. The nearest ladder was 200 feet downstream, and the concrete walls were coated in ice, at least an inch thick, smooth, featureless, impossible to climb. Liam tried anyway. He pushed toward the wall, Emma's weight making every step treacherous, and reached up with one hand. His fingers scraped against the ice. Slipped. Found nothing. He tried again, stretching onto his toes, reaching as high as possible. The ice was too smooth, the wall too vertical, and he couldn't release Emma to use both hands. The current caught him. Not strong, maybe 2 miles per hour under normal conditions. But Liam's body was already failing, his legs going numb, his core temperature dropping every second. When he tried to plant his feet, the slick rocks betrayed him. He fell. Water closed over his head for a full second before he found his footing again, before he pushed himself up, before he lifted Emma back above the surface. She was coughing, choking, screaming, and Liam held her as high as his arms could reach and fought the panic trying to hijack his brain. He tried the wall again, and again, and again. Each attempt weaker than the last, each failure costing energy he couldn't afford to lose. The cold was inside him now, shredding through his blood, slowing his heartbeat, shutting down everything non-essential. His body wanted to stop. His body wanted to let go of the weight in his arms and swim for the ladder 200 feet away. His body, in its primitive wisdom, understood that holding a 25-pound child above water while standing chest-deep in near-freezing water was a death sentence. Liam told his body to shut up. He backed against the concrete wall, pressing his spine to the ice, and lifted Emma as high as his arms could reach. Her head was above water. She was breathing. She was alive. He would keep her that way for as long as his body lasted. "It's okay," he whispered through chattering teeth. "It's okay, baby. I've got you. Help is coming. I'm not going to let go." He didn't know if help was coming. Didn't know if anyone had seen the crash, if anyone had called for rescue, if anyone even knew they were here. But he said it anyway because it was all he had left to give her. To understand why Liam jumped into that river, you have to understand what that river saved him from. 4 years earlier, different boy, different world. Liam was 7 and his universe was made of small, perfect things. The smell of his mother's drugstore perfume. Cheap, but to him it smelled like safety. The sound of her voice singing him to sleep. The weight of her hand in his when they walked to the bus stop. She called him my brave boy, even when he was scared of thunderstorms. They lived in a group home on the outskirts of Denver. Not ideal, but Sarah Carter was doing everything right. 18 months clean, parenting classes completed. 2 gym, saving for the apartment that would finally be their own. The fire started at 3:17 in the morning on a Tuesday in March. Investigators later determined it began in the basement. Faulty electrical panel. The building's owner had been warned 17 times. 17 official complaints. 17 inspections that never resulted in repairs because the owner had connections and the tenants were people society didn't care about protecting. The fire spread fast, faster than anyone expected. Liam's room was on the second floor. His mother's was next door. She came through the smoke and the screaming and the chaos, her hand finding his in the darkness. My brave boy. The hallway was impassable. Flames licking up the walls. Smoke so thick Liam couldn't see his own hand in front of his face. Sarah found a window, looked down at the 8-foot drop to frozen ground below. Jump, I'm right behind you. Liam jumped. He landed wrong, twisted ankle, something popping in his knee. But he was out, he was safe. He turned around, looked up at the window, waited for his mother to follow. The window filled with orange light and black smoke. He heard her scream, one long, terrible sound that would live in his nightmares forever. That would echo through every quiet moment for the rest of his life. That would make him understand, at 7 years old, that sometimes the people you love most can be ripped away, and there's nothing you can do but stand and watch and scream. And then the scream stopped, and there was only fire. A firefighter caught him trying to go back in, carried him away while he screamed and fought and begged. They found her body on the second-floor landing, 10 feet from the window. She'd been so close. The building's owner received a fine of $12,000. No criminal charges, no jail time, no consequences that meant anything. Sarah Carter was 29 years old. Her son was 7. And his world went from small and perfect to vast and empty and utterly without mercy. What Liam's father did behind closed doors explains why the boy jumped into freezing water for a stranger. But the full truth will come later, and it will change everything you think you know about the system that was supposed to protect him. After the fire, Liam entered foster care. First placement lasted 3 weeks, second lasted 2 months, third lasted 4 months. Each failure added notes to his file: anxiety, trust issues, difficulty forming attachments, making him harder to place, making him the kind of child caseworkers learned to avoid because success was unlikely and failure hurt too much. Then his biological father reappeared. Daniel Carter had been absent Liam's entire life, a name on a birth certificate, nothing more. But the fire made the news, and something that might have been guilt or might have been opportunity brought him back. The court was delighted, a biological parent willing to take custody, a file that could finally be closed, a success story for the annual report. Liam moved into his father's trailer on his 9th birthday. What happened there in that trailer over the next 11 months, Liam never fully described to anyone. What is known, what was documented in eventual court proceedings is this: Daniel Carter was addicted to methamphetamine. Daniel Carter had connections to people who paid money for access to children. Daniel Carter treated his son not as a human being to be loved, but as an asset to be exploited. The details remain sealed. The nightmares do not. Liam escaped on a night in October, 3 weeks past his 10th birthday. He waited until his father was unconscious, needle still in arm, and walked out the front door with nothing but the clothes on his back and a photograph of his mother tucked into his pocket. He never went back. He never reported what happened. He simply vanished into the streets of Denver and taught himself to survive. For 14 months, Liam existed in the spaces society pretends don't exist. Slept under bridges, in abandoned buildings, in gaps between dumpsters. Learned which shelters were safe and which weren't. Which adults could be trusted, almost none, and which alleys to avoid after dark. The Social Services Department received 43 separate reports about homeless children in the Denver area during this period. 43 citizens who saw kids sleeping rough, teachers who noticed students with no fixed address, police who picked up minors and flagged them for follow-up. All 43 reports were closed without investigation. The director of Child Protective Services, Jonathan Pierce, had implemented an efficiency initiative 3 years earlier. It meant ignoring any case without immediate political consequences. Homeless children had no advocates, no parents calling congressmen, no lawyers threatening lawsuits. They could be safely ignored. Jonathan Pierce received a performance bonus every quarter for reducing case backlog. 43 children remained on the streets while he collected those bonuses. Liam was one of them. But here's the thing about Liam Carter. The streets didn't break him. They changed him, hardened him, ate him in ways no child should age. But they didn't destroy the thing his mother had planted in those first 7 years. He helped people, a homeless 11-year-old with nothing, and he found ways to give, showed new street kids where to find safe spots, shared food when he had it, sat with people who were sick or withdrawing, stayed with them through the worst because he knew what it felt like to be alone in the dark. One of the people he helped was George, 53, former paramedic, diabetic, living under Interstate 25 after losing everything. George was working his way back, and in exchange for Liam's help, he taught the boy things: how to check for a pulse, recognize shock, perform CPR. Why? Liam asked once. George looked at him with something like recognition, like he could see the future written in this small boy's eyes. Because someday you'll be somewhere, and someone will need help, and no one else will be coming. When that happens, you'll want to know what to do. Liam learned. He never forgot. And on a frozen February morning, standing in water that was killing him, holding a stranger's daughter above the surface while his body screamed for him to let go, he finally understood what George had been preparing him for. Someone needed help. No one else was coming, and Liam Carter refused to let go. 10 minutes in the water, that's when the pain peaked, when his body was still fighting the cold, still generating heat, still capable of feeling what was happening to it. Liam's muscles cramped and spasmed, random bursts of agony shooting through his legs and core. His skin felt stabbed by 1,000 needles, each one driving deeper with every second. His core temperature dropped to 34 degrees Celsius, 93.2 Fahrenheit. Emma had stopped crying. That terrified him more than anything. He looked down at her pale face, blue-tinged lips, eyes starting to flutter closed, and understood the cold was taking her too. She was smaller, less body mass. If he was dying, she was dying faster. Liam did the only thing he could think of. He started to sing. The song was his mother's, a lullaby from before the fire, before the streets, before everything. He hadn't sung it since she died, hadn't let himself remember. But now in this frozen hell, the words came back like they'd been waiting. Hush now, baby. Close your eyes. Morning's coming by and by. Stars are fading one by one. Sleep now, darling. Day is done. His voice was broken, barely a whisper. But Emma's eyes opened. She looked up at him, this tiny creature, this impossibly small person, and stopped shivering long enough to listen. Her hand, ice cold and trembling, reached up and touched his face. More, she said. More song. 20 minutes in the water, his core temperature dropped to 29 degrees Celsius, 84.2 Fahrenheit. The pain was fading now, replaced by a dangerous warmth spreading through his body. Hypothermia's cruelest trick, convincing the dying that they were getting better. His arms shook so badly he feared dropping her. His legs threatened to buckle. But he kept singing the same 4 lines over and over, a loop, a mantra, a rope to hold on to when everything else was slipping away. Hush now, baby. Close your eyes. 30 minutes in the water, 25 degrees Celsius, 77 Fahrenheit. His vision started to blur. Thoughts became thick and slow. He couldn't remember exactly why he was standing in cold water, or who the child in his arms was, or why it mattered so much that he didn't let go. He just knew that he couldn't let go, couldn't stop, couldn't break the promise he'd made. I'm not going to let go, he whispered over and over, a prayer and a promise and a desperate plea to a body that was shutting down. I'm not gonna let go. I'm not gonna let go. 40 minutes in the water, 24 degrees Celsius, 75.2 Fahrenheit. His heart was barely beating. His lungs were barely working. The ice had crawled up his chest, his neck, into his brain. He couldn't feel his arms anymore. Couldn't feel the weight of the child. Couldn't feel anything except a distant, fading certainty that he had to hold on. He was still singing, barely, a breath, a whisper, fragments of melody escaping lips that had forgotten how to form words. Sleep now, darling. Day is 45 minutes. A commuter on the bridge saw the broken guardrail and called 911 at 6:23. First responders went to the wrong location initially, a half-mile downstream where the channel was deeper. The correction came at 6:51. They found Liam at 7:03, still standing, arms still raised, Emma still clutched against his chest, face buried in his frozen shirt, and he was still singing. The rescue divers went in immediately. They found that his fingers had frozen around her coat, literally frozen, locked in place by ice and hypothermia and sheer impossible will. They had to pry his grip open to separate them. In the ambulance, the paramedic checked his core temperature, 23 degrees Celsius, 73.4 Fahrenheit. Normal is 98.6. The paramedic looked at his partner and said three words that would echo through medical conferences for years. This kid's dead. But he wasn't. Not yet. The man who would become Liam Carter's father sat in a hospital waiting room with blood on his hands. Not metaphorical blood, real blood. The blood of a boy he'd never met, transferred from frozen skin to calloused palms when paramedics had to physically pry Liam's grip from Emma's coat. Marcus Stone, president of the Denver chapter of the Hells Angels, former Marine with 3 combat tours, a man who had buried friends and faced death without flinching, stared at his hands and couldn't stop shaking. His daughter was alive. That fact hadn't penetrated yet. Doctors had said the words, stable condition, expected recovery, remarkably good prognosis. But Marcus couldn't process them. All he could see was the image burned into his brain. Emma being carried from an ambulance, wrapped in emergency blankets, face blue, eyes closed, impossibly small, and next to her on a second stretcher, a boy who looked like death had already claimed him. Marcus touched the medallion at his throat, small silver circle worn smooth by years of handling, containing a single lock of auburn hair. Claire's hair, his wife's hair. The only thing he had left of her besides the daughter she'd died bringing into the world. Protect her, Claire had whispered, hand growing cold in his. Promise me, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, he'd sworn. And he'd failed. Marcus wasn't supposed to cry. His father had beaten that out of him by 12. The Marine Corps reinforced the lesson. The club expected its president to be iron, unbreakable, a rock against which chaos could crash without effect. But sitting in that waiting room, surrounded by antiseptic smell and the soft beeping of distant monitors, something cracked inside his chest. He kept seeing the boy's hands. The paramedics had shown him briefly before rushing both children inside. Liam's hands, small hands, a child's hands, torn to shreds, knuckles split, white bone visible, glass embedded in palms, frostbite already blackening fingertips. He punched through a car window, one paramedic had said, voice awed, bare hands. Must have hit it 4 or 5 times before it broke. To save Emma, the stranger's child, a girl he'd never met, and this boy, this small, broken, clearly homeless boy in rags that wouldn't keep a dog warm, had destroyed his own hands to reach her, had stood in killing water for 45 minutes, had held her above the surface while his body died around him. Marcus didn't understand. He'd seen heroism, Fallujah, Ramadi, men doing incredible things for brothers. But that was different. Soldiers trained for sacrifice, bound by brotherhood forged in blood. This boy had none of that. Nobody. Nothing. A ghost, a throwaway child society had discarded like garbage. And he'd given everything for a stranger's daughter. The emergency department doors swung open. A doctor emerged, white coat, tired eyes, clipboard clutched to chest. She scanned the room and her gaze settled on Marcus with that particular expression medical professionals reserve for conversations they don't want to have. Mr. Stone. Marcus stood, his legs felt uncertain beneath him. Your daughter is stable, core temperature back to normal. Vitals strong, children are remarkably resilient. I expect full recovery with no lasting effects. Relief hit like a physical force. Emma was okay. His baby would survive. What about the boy? The doctor's expression shifted. Cautious optimism drained away, replaced by something Marcus recognized from too many military hospitals. The look before they tell you your friend isn't coming home. The boy's situation is complicated. Complicated how? His core temperature on arrival was 23 degrees Celsius, 73.4 Fahrenheit. Normal is 37. She paused. By every medical standard, he should not have survived. His heart stopped twice in the ambulance. We've restarted it, stabilized cardiac function. But the concern now is his brain. What are you saying? When body temperature drops that low, blood flow to the brain is severely reduced. Extended hypoxia, oxygen deprivation, causes irreversible damage to neural tissue. She met his eyes. This boy was in that water 45 minutes. His brain went without adequate oxygen for most of that time. Scans show significant swelling, reduced activity in multiple regions. She chose her next words carefully. My recommendation is to discuss discontinuing life support. The kindest thing would be to let him go peacefully. The words hung between them, clinical and final. Something shifted inside Marcus. The thing cracking finally broke through. No, excuse me, I said no. You're not turning off any machines. You're not letting him go. You're going to fight for him like he fought for my daughter. Mr. Stone, I understand this is emotional, but you need to understand that damage is almost certainly irreversible. Even if he survived, he would likely never regain consciousness. And even if he did, Marcus stepped closer, not threatening, but not backing down. That boy held my daughter above water for 45 minutes. His hands are shredded to bone because he punched through a window to reach her. He didn't know her. He didn't owe her anything. His voice cracked, and he refused to let go. So you're going to refuse to let go too. Every treatment, every protocol, every experimental procedure that exists. Because if there's even a 1% chance he wakes up, I need to look him in the eye and thank him for saving my daughter's life. The doctor was quiet for a long moment. The experimental protocols are expensive, not covered by insurance. And without knowing the boy's family, I'll pay whatever it costs. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even then, I don't need guarantees. Marcus touched the medallion. I just need you to fight. Can you do that? Dr. Rachel Bennett studied him. Something changed in her expression. Clinical distance softening into something more human. I can do that. I'll assemble a team. We'll try ECMO. Extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, our best chance for severe hypothermia cases. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. She turned to leave, then paused. That boy, whoever he is, wherever he came from, he's the reason your daughter's alive. 23 years in medicine, and I've never seen anything like what he did. She met his eyes one more time. I didn't think it was possible. The name Tyler Ashford meant nothing to Marcus until a police detective said it 3 hours later. Detective Maria Santos found him in the hospital cafeteria, staring at a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. She was 40-something, tired eyes that had seen too much, and she carried herself with the careful neutrality of someone who'd learned that delivering bad news required a certain kind of emotional distance. Mr. Stone, may I sit? Marcus nodded. He'd been expecting this. The questions, the investigation, the slow machinery of justice grinding into motion. We've identified the driver, Santos said, flipping through a notebook. Tyler Ashford, 23 years old. She paused. The kind of pause that meant the next words mattered. Son of Congressman Richard Ashford. Marcus went very still, the coffee cup forgotten, the ambient noise of the cafeteria fading into background static. The congressman, yes, sir. Vehicle registration came back when we pulled the truck out. Mr. Ashford was apparently driving under the influence when he lost control. Where is he now? We don't know. Santos's jaw tightened. He fled the scene. Warrant's been issued, but the detective hesitated. Marcus could see her choosing words carefully, weighing what she could say, what she should say, what the rules allowed versus what justice demanded. But what? Congressman Ashford's office has already contacted the sheriff. There may be some complications in pursuing the arrest. Marcus felt familiar rage kindling, the kind that had gotten him into trouble before, the kind that made his hands curl into fists and his vision narrow to a single point of focus. He knew how this worked. Wealthy and connected playing by different rules. Children's crimes erased by phone calls and political pressure. Justice delayed until public attention moved elsewhere, and the whole thing could be quietly buried. This man left my daughter to die, crashed his car with a 2-year-old inside and ran. And you're telling me there might be complications. I'm telling you how these things sometimes go. Santos met his eyes, not saying I agree with it. She slid a card across the table, her personal cell number written on the back. You didn't get this from me. But Tyler Ashford checked into Wilderness Recovery Center in Aspen. 11 p.m. last night. Daddy's hiding him in a luxury rehab while he figures out how to make this disappear. Marcus took the card, said nothing, his mind already working through possibilities. Consequences. The line between justice and revenge, and whether that line still mattered when a child was involved. Santos stood to leave. For what it's worth, Mr. Stone, I hope that boy makes it, what he did. She shook her head. I've been doing this job 20 years. Never seen anything like it. Marcus made the first call at 4:17 that afternoon. David Morrison answered on the second ring. Dutch to everyone who mattered. Vice president of the Denver chapter. Closest friend Marcus had. A man he'd trusted with his life more times than either of them could count. Brother, Dutch, I need you. Name it. Get the word out. Emma's okay, but there's a boy in ACU who saved her. Homeless kid, 11 years old. Held her above water 45 minutes in freezing temperatures. Doctors want to pull the plug. I'm fighting it, but I need help. The line was quiet for 3 seconds. How much help? All of it. Dutch didn't hesitate. Consider it done. By 6 that evening, 23 motorcycles filled the hospital parking lot. By 8:57, the sound of engines idling created a constant low rumble that vibrated through the building's foundation. Hospital security didn't know what to do. This wasn't a threat, wasn't a protest. Just men on bikes, standing vigil. By midnight, the number had grown to over 200. They came from across Colorado, from Wyoming and Nebraska, from New Mexico and Kansas. Members streaming in from chapters Marcus had never met. Word had spread through the network with the speed of wildfire. A boy saved a president's daughter. A throwaway child society had abandoned. And he was dying while doctors talked about cost-benefit analysis and quality of life. The brotherhood answered. They filled the parking lot, overflowed onto streets, lined up machines in gleaming rows of chrome and black leather. They didn't make trouble, didn't start fights, just gathered. A silent army that understood loyalty ran deeper than blood. Marcus stood among them as the moon rose, looking at faces he'd ridden with for decades. Hard faces, scarred faces, faces society looked at and saw only threat. But he knew what else was there. Brother. Marcus turned. Dutch stood with arms crossed, gray beard catching the moonlight. The vice president looked older tonight, tired in a way that came from carrying other people's pain. How's the girl? She's going to be okay. Doctors say full recovery. Thank God. Dutch was quiet for a moment, the kind of silence that held weight. And the boy, Marcus felt his throat tighten. They want to take him off life support. Say his brain's too damaged. Say, even if he survives, he'll never wake up. What do you say? I say that's not happening. I'll spend every penny I have before I let them give up on him. Dutch nodded slowly, unsurprised. Brothers feel the same. Started a collection. 47,000 as of an hour ago. More coming. Marcus stared. 47,000. In 3 hours. That boy did something none of us could. Dutch's voice was rough. Saved your daughter when none of us were there. When you called for help and we were too far away to answer. That means something. He put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. That means everything. The tears came then, and Marcus didn't try to stop them. He wept in that parking lot, surrounded by 200 of the most dangerous-looking men in Colorado. And not one of them looked away. Not one of them judged. They had his back. They would always have his back. Around 2 in the morning, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from a contact he hadn't spoken to in years. A man who worked in places the law didn't reach. Who knew things before they became public knowledge. Tyler Ashford, Wilderness Recovery Center, Aspen. Room 204, 2 security guards. Father visiting daily. Marcus read it twice. Showed it to Dutch. What do you want to do? Dutch's question hung in the cold air. Behind them, 200 engines idled. 200 men who would follow Marcus into hell if he asked. Who understood that some debts could only be paid in blood. Marcus thought about Emma, small and blue in the ambulance. About Liam fighting for his life upstairs. About Tyler Ashford sleeping in a luxury rehab while consequences circled but never quite landed. Nothing. Not yet. Dutch raised an eyebrow. When that boy wakes up, and he will, I want to tell him justice was done the right way. That we didn't become the monsters they think we are. Marcus looked at the medallion around his neck. And if the system fails, if Ashford walks, he didn't finish, didn't need to. Dutch understood perfectly. Then we do it our way. But we give the system one chance, just one. The next 72 hours blurred into medical terminology, waiting room coffee, and the steady rhythm of machines keeping Liam alive. Marcus learned things. Things about the boy that made his chest ache. The detective work wasn't difficult. Police investigation into Tyler Ashford. Hospitals' attempts to identify their patient. Pieces of Liam's story emerged like a puzzle, assembling itself one terrible revelation at a time. Birth certificate. Sarah Carter. Mother. No father listed initially. Foster records from 4 counties. A missing person report filed 18 months ago. Never investigated, never followed up. Just another homeless kid in a system that had stopped pretending to care. He learned about the fire that killed Sarah Carter, about the landlord who'd ignored 17 safety complaints, about inspections that documented violations and produced nothing but paperwork, about a woman who died 10 feet from a window because someone decided profit mattered more than lives. He learned about Daniel Carter, the father who reappeared when it was convenient. Court records painted a picture Marcus recognized from his years in law enforcement. Addiction, exploitation, a predator wearing the mask of family, and he learned about Jonathan Pierce, Director of Child Protective Services, a bureaucrat who'd closed 43 cases involving homeless children over 3 years. 43 reports from teachers, police, concerned citizens, all filed away, all ignored, all sacrificed to efficiency metrics and performance bonuses. Each revelation hit Marcus like a blow. This boy, this child who'd risked everything for a stranger's daughter. He'd been failed by every institution designed to protect him. Mother died because someone prioritized profit. Childhood stolen by a predator sharing his DNA. Pleas for help ignored by a system that found homeless children inconvenient for spreadsheets. And still, somehow, he'd become the kind of person who jumped into freezing water for a little girl he'd never met. On the third morning, Marcus asked the hospital chaplain to meet him in the chapel. He wasn't religious, hadn't been to church since his mother's funeral 20 years ago. But sitting in that small room with its simple cross and smell of candle wax, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Helplessness. He'd spent his adult life being the man who fixed things, the Marine leading squads through impossible situations, the president keeping volatile personalities in line, the father who would move heaven and earth to protect his daughter, but he couldn't fix this. Couldn't force the boy to wake up. Couldn't undo 45 minutes in freezing water. Couldn't reach back through time and save Sarah Carter from that fire, or protect 7-year-old Liam from the monster who called himself father. I don't know how to do this, he whispered into darkness. The silence offered no answers, just the quiet hum of ventilation and distant footsteps in hallways beyond. I couldn't protect my wife, couldn't protect my daughter. And now this kid who saved her, he's dying, and there's nothing I can do. Marcus reached into his jacket. The weight was familiar, comforting in a way that said something troubling about who he'd become. The pistol felt cold against his palm. He'd carried a weapon so long he felt naked without one. And in this moment, dark chapel at 3 a.m, boy dying down the hall, system protecting the man responsible, the solution the gun offered seemed almost reasonable. Find Tyler Ashford. End him. Then end himself. Let Emma be raised by Dutch in the club. She'd be loved, protected, better off without a father who failed everyone he tried to save. He was still holding the gun when the chapel door creaked open. Daddy. Marcus froze. Emma stood in the doorway in her hospital gown, bare feet pale against linoleum, eyes huge in dim light. She'd slipped away from the nurses again. Had been doing that, wandering the halls looking for something. Sophie, baby, what are you doing up? She patted across and climbed into his lap. He had just enough time to slide the gun back into his pocket before her arms wrapped around his neck. You're crying, she said, not a question, just observation delivered with the brutal honesty of small children. Yeah, baby, Daddy's crying. Is it because of the boy, the one who held me in the water? Marcus felt his heart crack open. Yeah, the boy is very sick. Doctors aren't sure if he's going to get better. Emma was quiet, face pressed against his shoulder. Then as she pulled back with an expression far too old for a 2-year-old, far too knowing, he said he wouldn't let go. What? In the water? He said, I'm not going to let go. Over and over, he promised. Her small hand touched his wet cheek, and he didn't let go. Daddy, not even when he was so cold, not even when he was scared. She looked at him with absolute certainty, absolute faith. He doesn't lie. I know he doesn't. So if he said he won't let go, that means he won't. Emma's voice became fierce, determined. You have to believe him, Daddy. You have to not let go either. Marcus couldn't speak. His daughter was looking at him with eyes that saw everything, that understood more than he'd given her credit for. Okay, he whispered. Okay, baby, I won't let go either. He carried her back to her room, stayed until she fell asleep, then went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror for a longer time. The gun was still in his pocket. He took it out, looked at it, thought about what he'd almost done, then unloaded it, separated magazine from frame, and locked both pieces in his truck's gun safe. When he came back inside, he went to Liam's room, sat in the chair beside the bed, watched monitors trace the fragile thread of life still holding. "I won't let go," he said to the unconscious boy. "I promise." While Marcus kept vigil, another story was unfolding in newsrooms across Denver. Sarah Chen had been a reporter for the Denver Post for 8 years, long enough to develop instincts about which stories mattered, which ones would burn hot for a week then fade, which ones had the potential to change things. The moment she heard about the crash, she knew. She started with the basics. Tyler Ashford, 23, congressman's son. That alone would have been enough for a standard political scandal piece. Rich kid gets special treatment, public outrage, apologies and promises of reform. Then nothing changes. But Sarah dug deeper. Tyler's arrest record wasn't public, sealed by court order. But she had sources, people who owed favors, people who believed sunlight was the best disinfectant. What she found made her physically ill. 14 prior incidents. 14 times Tyler Ashford had been arrested, charged, or cited. DUI, assault, drug possession, domestic violence. Each time the charges disappeared, records sealed, victims paid off or intimidated into silence. She found police reports that never made it to prosecutors, witness statements that vanished from files. A pattern so clear it could only mean one thing. Someone with power had been making Tyler's problems go away, over and over and over. Sarah called her editor. "I need 3 days, no questions, just trust me." She got 2. The deeper she dug, the uglier it became. But then she found something that shifted her entire focus. The boy in the ICU, the homeless 11-year-old who'd saved Tyler's victim. Sarah started pulling threads, foster care records, missing person reports. And that's when she found Jonathan Pierce, Director of Child Protective Services, 10 years in the position. Impeccable reputation for efficiency, award winner, budget hero. She requested case files under Freedom of Information laws, got stonewalled, tried again with different approaches. Finally found a former caseworker willing to talk off record. They called it the Efficiency Initiative, the woman said, her voice shaking even though she'd left the department 2 years ago. If a case didn't have political pressure behind it, we were told to close it. Fastest way to keep numbers looking good. How many cases? The woman was quiet. How many? Sarah pressed. Over 3 years, hundreds. But the ones that haunt me, 43 reports about homeless children, all closed without investigation, all marked resolved when we knew those kids were still out there. Sarah felt her hands go cold. "Do you have proof?" "I kept copies." The woman's voice dropped to a whisper. "I knew someday someone would ask. I just hoped it would be before more kids died." In Aspen, Tyler Ashford sat in a room that cost $3,000 a day and felt like a prisoner. The Wilderness Recovery Center marketed itself as a healing sanctuary. Luxury accommodations, gourmet meals, therapy sessions that promised transformation. What it really offered was a place for wealthy families to hide problems until public attention moved elsewhere. Tyler stared at his phone. News coverage was everywhere. The crash, the little girl rescued, the homeless boy in critical condition. Comment sections filled with rage directed at him. Monster, coward, hope he rots in prison. His father had taken his laptop, limited phone access, no social media. But Tyler found ways, and what he found was destroying him from the inside. The boy's name was Liam Carter, 11 years old, homeless for over a year. Mother died in a fire. Father. Tyler couldn't read about the father without feeling sick. This child had survived hell, and Tyler had added to it. Left him to die. Ran like the coward everyone was calling him. There was a knock on the door. His father entered without waiting for answer. Congressman Richard Ashford, 58, silver hair, $10,000 suit. The kind of man who believed rules applied to other people. "We need to talk." Tyler looked up. "The lawyers say if the boy dies, they'll upgrade charges. Vehicular homicide. 20 years minimum." Tyler's stomach dropped. "But," Richard continued, sitting in the leather chair across from his son, "if he survives, if this becomes just another DUI accident, we can work with that. Rehab, remorse, character witnesses. You'll do some time, but nothing like what they're threatening." Tyler stared at his father. "So you're hoping he dies?" Richard's expression didn't change. "I'm hoping we can manage this situation to the best possible outcome for our family." Tyler felt something break inside him. "I left a baby to drown, Dad. I climbed out of that car and I saw her and I ran. How is there a best possible outcome from that? Richard leaned forward. You made a mistake. You were impaired. You panicked. But you're my son, and I protect my own. That's what family does. Tyler looked at his father, really looked at him, and understood for the first time that the man sitting across from him wasn't interested in justice or morality or doing the right thing. He was interested in winning, and Tyler was just another problem to be managed. Day 5 began with hope. Liam opened his eyes at 6:43 in the morning. The fluorescent lights of the ICU burned through 14 days of unconsciousness. His gaze drifted across ceiling tiles, monitors, IV lines snaking into his arms. Then it landed on Marcus Stone, who had fallen asleep in the bedside chair and jerked awake at the change in the heart monitor's rhythm. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The man who had been a stranger 5 days ago. The boy who had saved his daughter. Hey, Marcus said softly, leaning forward. Hey, kid, can you hear me? Liam's lips moved. No sound at first. Throat raw from the breathing tube removed the day before. But he tried again. Emma. That single word, his daughter's name. The first thing this boy said after nearly dying. It hit Marcus like a freight train. Tears spilled down his cheeks before he realized he was crying. She's okay, he managed. Sophie's fine. You saved her. You saved my little girl. Something like a smile flickered across Liam's cracked lips. His eyes started to close. Rest, Marcus said. You rest now. I'm not going anywhere. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Brain activity improving. Motor responses present. Talk of moving Liam out of ICU within the week if progress continued. Marcus allowed himself to believe the worst was over. He was wrong. At 9:17 that afternoon, Liam suffered a massive cerebral edema. One moment he was sleeping peacefully. The next, monitors were screaming, nurses rushing in, someone shouting for a crash cart. Marcus was pushed into the hallway, and through the window he watched them work, injecting medications, adjusting machines, doing everything modern medicine could do to fight death. It wasn't enough. At 2:41, Dr. Rachel Bennett emerged with an expression Marcus knew too well. He'd seen it on military surgeons, on chaplains delivering notifications, on anyone tasked with telling someone the person they loved was gone. His brain is swelling faster than we can control it. We've induced a coma to reduce pressure, but the damage is extensive, more extensive than we initially realized. What does that mean? Even if he survives the next 48 hours, there's very high probability of permanent brain damage, loss of motor function, cognitive impairment, possibly a persistent vegetative state. Marcus felt the chapel calling again. The weight of the gun he'd locked away. What's the probability he comes through intact? Dr. Bennett hesitated. 23 years of medicine had taught her that hope was sometimes crueler than honesty. 0%. By every metric, every case study, every statistical model, the probability that this boy wakes up with normal brain function is 0. 0. The word hung like a death sentence. Marcus thought about Emma's words. He said he wouldn't let go. He doesn't lie. Then your metrics are wrong, Marcus said quietly. Your case studies don't account for this kid. He held my daughter above water 45 minutes when your models say he should have lasted 10. Broke through a car window with bare hands when that should have been impossible. Survived a core temperature that should have killed him 3 times over. Mr. Stone, I don't want probabilities. Marcus met her eyes. I want you to fight. Can you do that? Fight for him like he fought for Emma. Dr. Bennett was quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer. There's an experimental protocol, ECMO. We use it for severe hypothermia, but we've never tried it on someone with this degree of brain involvement. Around-the-clock monitoring, specialists, equipment from Denver General. Do it. It's not covered by insurance. The cost, I don't care about cost. I'll sell my house, my bike, everything I own. Just give him a chance. Something shifted in Dr. Bennett's expression. Clinical detachment cracked, and beneath it, Marcus saw something unexpected. Shame. I wanted to give up on him, she said quietly. That first night, I told you to let him go. Looked at charts and scans and made a decision based on numbers. Forgot that medicine isn't just about numbers. She straightened, like a soldier preparing for battle. I won't make that mistake again. I'll assemble the team, start ECMO tonight, and I will personally monitor him as long as it takes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when he wakes up. The next 6 days were the longest of Marcus Stone's life. He barely left the hospital. Slept in waiting room chairs, showered in staff locker rooms when Dutch brought clean clothes. Emma had been discharged on day 3, healthy and whole, but came back every day with her grandmother to sit beside Liam's bed and hold his hand through the rails. She talked to him, told him about her toys, her favorite cartoons, the dog she wanted, described sunsets from her grandmother's porch, the taste of ice cream, the way snow looked on mountains in morning light, and every day before leaving, she leaned close to his ear and whispered the same thing. You promised, don't forget. The brotherhood kept vigil outside. Numbers fluctuated, some had to return to jobs and families, but never fewer than 50 bikes in that lot. They brought food for hospital staff, helped elderly patients find their cars, gave directions to lost visitors, fixed a nurse's motorcycle that wouldn't start, shoveled snow from the emergency entrance during a storm. The most helpful gang of terrifying men I've ever seen, one nurse called them. On day 9, something changed. Marcus was dozing when the heart monitor's rhythm shifted. Not an alarm. It's in my arm. Something subtler, different from the mechanical steadiness of the past week. He sat up, looked at the screen, looked at Liam. The boy's eyes were moving beneath closed lids. REM sleep. Brain activity that hadn't been present since the edema. Marcus grabbed Dr. Bennett from the hallway. She ran tests, checked readings, consulted specialists. This is impossible, she kept saying. This shouldn't be happening. The swelling hasn't reduced enough for this level of activity. But it was happening. Day 10, Liam's fingers twitched. Day 11, brain scans showed activity in regions that had been dark since arrival. Day 12. He squeezed Emma's hand when she asked him to. And on day 14, exactly 2 weeks after a homeless boy jumped into a frozen river, Liam Carter opened his eyes, looked at the people around his bed, and spoke. Emma. Marcus leaned in, hard hammering. She's right here, kid. Right here. Emma climbed onto the bed against every protocol, but no one stopped her. She pressed her face against Liam's shoulder. You kept your promise, she said. I knew you would. Liam's hand, still weak, still recovering from frostbite that had nearly cost him his fingers, came up to rest on her hair. I don't break promises, he whispered. Dr. Bennett stood in the doorway, eyes wet, hands shaking. 23 years, thousands of patients. She had never seen anything like this. The first word he spoke after the coma made grown men with scars and tattoos turn away to hide their tears. And in that moment, Marcus Stone made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. The medical community called it the miracle of the Platte River. Case studies were written, papers published. Liam's recovery became a touchstone for discussions about human survival limits, the mysterious resilience of the young, things medicine still couldn't explain. Dr. Rachel Bennett gave an interview to a Denver news station the day Liam left the ICU. The video would eventually reach 12 million views. I wanted to give up on him, she said, tears streaming. I looked at data and made a clinical decision that this child could not survive. I almost killed him with my certainty. She paused, collecting herself. But his father, she caught herself, the man by his side every day. Mr. Stone, he refused to accept it, told me to fight. And I'm so grateful because Liam Carter taught me something I'd forgotten after 23 years. What's that? That miracles aren't things that happen to us. They're things we fight for, things we believe in even when all evidence says we're wrong. Her voice broke. That boy believed he could save a girl in a frozen river, and he did. The least I could do was believe he could survive. The interviewer leaned forward. What would you say to other doctors who face similar decisions? Dr. Bennett wiped her eyes. I'd say don't let statistics rob you of hope. Don't let experience make you cynical. Every patient is more than numbers on a chart, and sometimes the most important thing we can do is refuse to give up even when everything tells us to. She looked directly at the camera. Liam Carter taught me that. A homeless 11-year-old boy with nothing taught a doctor with 2 decades of experience the most important lesson of her career. The clip went viral within hours. The story spread. Local news first, then state, then national. A homeless boy saves a toddler from drowning. 45 minutes in freezing water, survives impossible odds, fighting for his life in a Colorado hospital. Details emerged, each adding fuel to growing public interest. The fire that killed his mother, the father who betrayed him, the system that abandoned him, the 43 reports ignored, and through it all, the image capturing the nation's imagination. A small boy in rags standing in killing water, holding a stranger's child above the surface, refusing to let go. But it wasn't just the rescue that gripped people. It was what came after. On day 17, Sarah Chen's article hit the front page of the Denver Post. The 43 Forgotten. The headline was simple. The content was devastating. She laid it all out. Names, dates, case numbers, 43 reports about homeless children filed with Child Protective Services over 3 years. 43 calls for help from teachers, police officers, concerned citizens, all closed without investigation, and all marked resolved when the children remained on the streets. And at the center of it all, Jonathan Pierce, director of CPS, the man who'd implemented the efficiency initiative, who'd received quarterly bonuses for reducing case backlog while children slept under bridges and in abandoned buildings. Sarah included internal emails, budget reports showing the bonuses, testimony from former caseworkers who'd been ordered to close cases without investigation. One email in particular became infamous. Pierce writing to his staff, focus resources on cases with visibility. Low-profile situations can be administratively resolved. Administratively resolved. Bureaucratic speak for ignored. And she included Liam's story, a boy who'd fallen through every crack the system had created, who'd survived despite being abandoned by everyone meant to protect him, who'd become a hero while the bureaucrats who failed him collected their rewards. The public reaction was immediate and volcanic. By noon, the hashtag the 43 Forgotten was trending nationally. By evening, protesters had gathered outside the CPS offices. By the next morning, the state attorney general announced a formal investigation. Jonathan Pierce was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. But the story didn't stop there. Sarah's follow-up piece dropped 2 days later. This one focused on Tyler Ashford, the congressman's son, the man who'd left a baby to drown and fled the scene. She detailed the 14 prior incidents, the arrests that never became charges, the records sealed by court order, the pattern of protection that had allowed Tyler to hurt people without consequence for years. She found victims willing to talk. A woman Tyler had assaulted outside a bar in Denver, her jaw broken in 3 places, paid $50,000 to drop charges and sign an NDA. A man he'd hit while driving drunk 3 years ago. Spinal injuries that ended his career as a carpenter. Also paid off. Silenced. People who'd been bought or threatened into accepting that justice didn't apply to them. And she connected the dots to Congressman Richard Ashford. Campaign donations from wealthy families whose children had also avoided consequences. Votes on bills that benefited law enforcement unions willing to look the other way. A web of corruption that stretched far beyond one reckless son. The internet did what the internet does best. They found everything. Old photos, social media posts Tyler had deleted, videos from parties showing him drinking and bragging about getting away with things. Every piece of evidence that proved this wasn't a tragic accident, but the inevitable result of a system that protected the wealthy and connected. One video showed Tyler laughing about a DUI arrest that disappeared. My dad made some calls. Boom, like it never happened. The video was viewed 8 million times in 2 days. Congressman Ashford's office released a statement expressing concern and sympathy for the boy injured in the tragic accident involving my son. It backfired spectacularly. Tragic accident became a meme, a symbol of everything wrong with how the powerful treated consequences. Within hours, the phrase was being used mockingly across social media. Comedy shows picked it up. Late-night hosts tore it apart. One comedian summed it up perfectly. A tragic accident is when a tree falls on your car. This was a drunk guy leaving a baby to die. There's a difference. The pressure became unbearable. The arrest happened on day 19, 4:37 in the afternoon. Tyler Ashford had been moved from the Aspen rehab to his father's home in Cherry Hills Village, a gated community where average homes cost $3 million and residents expected their privacy respected by law enforcement. They were disappointed. FBI agents, not local police, not the sheriff's department that had been slow-walking the investigation, arrived with a warrant and a media escort carefully arranged by someone who understood the value of public spectacle. Later, people would speculate who tipped off the press. Marcus never confirmed or denied. But Dutch Morrison was seen smiling that day for the first time since the accident. The footage showed everything. Tyler Ashford led from a mansion in handcuffs, face cycling through confusion, fear, then dawning realization that his father's protection had finally failed. Congressman Richard Ashford trying to block agents, threatening lawsuits and career consequences until one agent calmly informed him that obstruction would result in his own arrest. "Do you understand what you're doing?" the congressman shouted. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The agent's response became legendary. "Yes, sir. You're the father of a man who left a 2-year-old to drown. Now please step aside or you'll be arrested too. And behind them, visible through mansion gates, a crowd. Hundreds of people, some with signs, some with cameras, all chanting a single word. Justice, justice, justice. Tyler was charged with vehicular assault, child endangerment, DUI, and leaving the scene of an accident involving injury. The prosecutor, newly elected, unbeholden to political machinery that had protected the Ashfords for decades, announced she would seek maximum sentence, 25 years. But Tyler wasn't the only one facing consequences. Sheriff Michael Torres, who dragged his feet after receiving calls from the congressman's office, found himself under investigation by the state attorney general. Evidence was damning: emails, phone records, a paper trail of political pressure and willing compliance. One email from Torres to his deputy read, "Congressman wants us to slow walk the Ashford case. Give it minimum priority." He resigned before the investigation completed, would eventually plead guilty to corruption charges. 7 years federal prison. And Jonathan Pierce faced the most serious charges of all, 12 counts of criminal negligence resulting in harm to a minor. The prosecution argued his efficiency initiative had directly contributed to the suffering of dozens of children, including Liam Carter. They presented evidence of bonuses received. Reports closed without investigation. Children who had died or been seriously harmed while his department looked away. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Former caseworkers testified about being ordered to ignore reports. Teachers who'd filed concerns about homeless students only to watch those reports disappear into bureaucratic black holes. Police officers who'd found children sleeping in cars and filed reports that never resulted in action. One caseworker broke down on the stand. "I knew those kids were out there. I knew they needed help. But Pierce made it clear that helping them wasn't a priority, that our jobs depended on closing cases quickly, not helping children effectively." The defense argued Pierce was simply trying to manage limited resources efficiently. The prosecution brought in a budget analyst who showed that during the 3 years of the efficiency initiative, the CPS budget had actually increased by 18%. Pierce hadn't been managing scarcity. He'd been prioritizing his own career advancement over children's lives. Jonathan Pierce was sentenced to 12 years. 1 year for each count. 1 year for each child the system could prove he'd harmed. It wasn't enough. Nothing could undo the damage. But it was something. A crack in the wall of impunity, protecting those who failed the most vulnerable. And it sent a message that would echo through social services departments across the country. Children matter. Even the ones without advocates. Even the ones sleeping under bridges. They matter. In a minimum security federal prison in Cannon City, Tyler Ashford watched the news coverage of Pierce's sentencing. He'd been in custody for 2 months, awaiting trial. His lawyers were negotiating a plea deal, talking about 15 years instead of 25 if he showed remorse and cooperated. But Tyler wasn't thinking about plea deals. He was thinking about the boy, Liam Carter, 11 years old when Tyler left him to die, now 12, recovering, adopted by the biker whose daughter he'd saved. Tyler had received a letter from his father 2 weeks ago, brief, cold, explaining that the family had decided it would be best if Tyler took full responsibility, pled guilty, accepted whatever sentence the court imposed, for the good of the family. Translation: you're on your own. Tyler understood. He'd been a useful son when his mistakes could be covered up. Now he was a liability, a political embarrassment. Better to cut him loose and move on. He wrote a letter that night, not to his father, not to his lawyers, to Liam Carter. It took him 6 tries to get the words right. "Dear Liam, you don't know me, but I'm the reason you almost died. I was driving the truck that went into the river. I was drunk. I lost control, and when I climbed out and saw Emma in the back seat, I ran. I left her to die, and I left you to die trying to save her. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that what you did, the choice you made to jump in when I chose to run, it changed me. I spent my whole life running from consequences, having my father fix my mistakes, believing I was special enough that rules didn't apply. You proved me wrong. You're 11 years old, homeless, had every reason to look the other way and protect yourself. But you didn't. You're more of a man at 11 than I've ever been. I'm going to plead guilty, accept whatever sentence they give me, and I'm going to spend every day of that sentence trying to figure out how to become the kind of person who runs toward people who need help instead of away from them. Thank you for saving Emma. Thank you for showing me what courage actually looks like. Tyler Ashford. He sent the letter, never received a response. Didn't expect one. But writing it changed something inside him. The first step on a long road toward becoming someone different than he'd been. The scene that would define the miracle of the Platte River in public imagination happened on day 23. Liam was strong enough to sit up now, eat solid food, have conversations lasting more than a few minutes. Doctors were amazed. The brain damage they'd feared hadn't materialized. Months of physical therapy ahead for his hands and legs. But cognitive abilities seemed intact. He was going to be okay. More than okay. He was going to have a future. Marcus had planned to tell him that day. Practiced words 100 times, trying to find the right way to ask a child he'd known less than a month to become his son. But Emma beat him to it. She climbed onto Liam's bed. Had been doing that daily, ignoring half-hearted objections from nurses. Settled against his side with the proprietary confidence of a toddler who'd decided something important. "You're my brother now," she announced. Liam looked at her, then Marcus, confused. "What? Daddy said you saved me, so now you're family." "That's how it works." Marcus felt his carefully prepared speech dissolving. "What she's trying to say, what I wanted to ask," he stopped. Started again. "Liam, I know we don't know each other well. I know you've been through things no kid should go through. And I know you have no reason to trust adults or systems or anyone who says they want to help." Liam watched him, guarded, waiting. "But what you did for Emma, I can never repay that. There's no gift, no amount of money, nothing that would equal what you gave my daughter." Marcus's voice cracked. "You gave her life. You gave me my life. Because if she hadn't, he couldn't finish. The point is, I'd be honored. My whole family would be honored if you'd let us take care of you. Not as debt or obligation. As family, real family, the kind that doesn't leave, the kind that shows up." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the medallion. "My wife gave me this before she died. Told me to protect our daughter. For 2 years I tried to live up to that. But I failed. When Emma needed protecting most, I wasn't there." He held the medallion toward Liam. "You were. I want you to have this. Not because you've earned it. You've earned more than I could ever give. But because when I look at you, I see family. I see the person who saved the only thing in this world I can't live without." Marcus's hands were shaking, "And I want you to be part of that." The room went silent. Liam looked at the medallion, then Emma, then Marcus. His eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. He'd probably learned not to cry a long time ago. "I don't know how to be in a family," he said finally. "Don't know how to trust people. Every adult who was supposed to protect me either died or—" He stopped. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," Marcus said. "I've made mistakes you can't imagine. Done things I'm not proud of. I'm not a good man, Liam. Not by most standards." He met the boy's eyes. "But I'm a loyal one. And I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that." Emma grabbed Liam's hand and placed it on the medallion. "Just say yes. It's not hard." For the first time since Marcus had known him, Liam laughed. Small, rusty, but real. "Okay, I'll try." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "That's all I'm asking." He helped Liam put the medallion around his neck. Silver settled against the boy's chest, warm from Marcus's body heat, carrying the memory of a woman who died protecting her child and the promise of a man determined to do the same. "Welcome to the family, son." Emma clapped her hands. "Now we're really a family. You, me, and Daddy. And all the uncles outside with the loud bikes." Liam smiled, still tentative, still learning how. "All of them." Emma nodded seriously. "They're your family too now. That's a lot of uncles." Marcus laughed through tears. "Yeah, kid. You just inherited about 200 uncles who would ride through hell for you." Liam touched the medallion. "I don't know what I did to deserve this." Marcus put his hand over Liam's. "You survived. You kept fighting. You refused to let go. That's all any of us can do." The official adoption would take 3 months to process. But the real ceremony happened on day 25 in the hospital parking lot. 1,523 motorcycles. Verified by local police who'd closed 3 surrounding streets to accommodate overflow. Also verified by Guinness World Records, whose representative had been sent when someone realized this gathering might qualify for largest motorcycle gathering at a medical facility in recorded history. It did. Bikers from 47 states, from Canada, from Germany and Australia, international chapter members who'd heard the story and felt compelled to be present. They filled the parking lot, spilled onto sidewalks, lined streets for blocks. The sound of 1,500 engines idling was thunder that never ended, a constant rumble that vibrated through the building's foundation and made windows shake. Hospital administration had initially objected, concerned about noise, about disruption, about the optics of having hundreds of bikers surrounding their facility. Then one of the nurses spoke up. "These men have been here every day for 3 weeks. They brought us food when we were too busy to leave. They helped patients find their way. They shoveled snow during the storm. They've been nothing but respectful." She looked at the administrator. "And they're here for a boy who saved a little girl's life. If we can't make space for that, what are we even doing?" The objections stopped. And in the center, standing on a flatbed truck converted to makeshift stage, was Marcus Stone with Liam beside him. The boy was thin, still healing, moving carefully, damaged hands wrapped in bandages, legs unsteady, but standing, alive, looking out at the sea of leather and chrome with an expression slowly transforming from fear to wonder. Marcus had never been good at speeches, preferred action to words, but some moments demanded words. "Most of you don't know me," he began, his voice amplified through speakers that carried across the crowd. "But you know why you're here. You came because you heard about a boy who did something impossible." The crowd was silent, 1,500 people barely breathing. "Who jumped into a frozen river to save a stranger's child, who held her above water 45 minutes while his own body was dying, who refused to let go even when letting go was the only rational thing to do." He put his hand on Liam's shoulder. "This is that boy, Liam Carter. And as of today, he's my son." The roar from 1,500 throats was deafening, fists pumped, engines revved. Someone started chanting Liam's name, and within seconds the entire crowd had taken it up. "Liam, Liam, Liam." Liam looked overwhelmed, eyes wet, hands shaking. Marcus leaned close. "You okay? I don't understand," Liam whispered. "Why are they here? I didn't do anything that special." Marcus smiled, the smile of a man who'd seen too much cruelty to take kindness for granted. "You proved that one person with nothing but courage can make a difference. That's what they're here for. That's what you represent." He stepped back. "Go on, say something." Liam looked terrified, but stepped forward anyway. "I don't know what to say. I just saw a kid in trouble and couldn't walk away. That's all. Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't," someone shouted from the crowd. Others joined. "No way. You're a hero. We love you, kid." Liam swallowed hard. "I'm not a hero. Just someone who got lucky. Lucky I was there. Lucky I knew how to help. Lucky people didn't give up on me when I couldn't help myself." He looked at Marcus, at Emma watching from the truck's cab, at the crowd of strangers who'd traveled thousands of miles to celebrate his survival. "For a long time I thought I was alone, thought nobody cared what happened to me." His voice cracked. "I was wrong. You're here. You all came for me, and I don't know how to thank you." He paused, gathering courage. "So I'll just say this. If you ever see someone who needs help, really needs help, don't walk away. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't tell yourself it's not your problem, because maybe you're the only one who can help. Maybe you're their only chance." Liam's voice grew stronger. "And maybe someday they'll be standing in front of a crowd like this, trying to find words to explain how much it meant that you didn't give up on them." Silence. Then from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice began to sing. The lullaby, Liam's mother's lullaby, the song he'd whispered to Emma in freezing water. "Hush now, baby. Close your eyes." Other voices joined, rough voices, voices more accustomed to shouting than singing, cracking with emotion but pushing through. Morning's coming by and by. Within seconds, 1,500 people were singing a lullaby to a boy who'd lost everything and found something greater than he'd ever imagined. Stars are fading one by one. Liam broke down. The tears he'd held back for years, for his mother, his childhood, every moment of fear and pain and loneliness, finally broke through. He stood on that stage, surrounded by strangers who'd become family, and wept. Marcus held him. Emma climbed up, wrapping small arms around Liam's waist, and the crowd kept singing, "Sleep now, darling. Day is done." Dutch Morrison stood in the front row, tears streaming down his scarred face. Next to him, men who had fought wars and buried brothers openly cried. Because this wasn't just about one boy. It was about every child who'd been forgotten, every person who'd been told they didn't matter, every time the system had failed and ordinary people had to step up. It was about choosing to be the kind of person who doesn't let go. 5 years later, August 2024, Lake Granby, Colorado. The water was warmer, summer sun bright on mountain peaks. Liam Carter was 16 now, nearly a foot taller, shoulders broadened from years working on motorcycles with his father, hands still bearing scars that would never fade. He wore the medallion every day. Emma was 7, complaining the lake was too cold despite begging to come. She'd inherited her father's stubbornness and her brother's fierce protectiveness of people smaller than herself. Marcus was 46, gray streaking his beard. Content in ways he'd never imagined possible before that February morning 6 years ago. They were packing up when Liam heard the scream. 50 yards offshore, a small shape thrashing, arms flailing, head dipping below the surface. Liam didn't think. He ran. The child, Marcus, 6 years old, foster care, was going under when Liam reached him. He grabbed the boy, got an arm around his chest, swam them both to shore. Different lake, different child, same instinct. Circle closing. On the beach, Liam knelt to meet young Marcus's eyes, saw the flinch when the foster mother touched him, the weariness, the thousand small signs he recognized because he'd carried them himself. "Hey," Liam said gently, "you're okay. I've got you." The boy was shaking, not just from cold. "Someone came for me," Liam told him, "just like I came for you. That's how it works." He touched the medallion. "Someday you'll be the one who comes for someone else. You'll see someone who needs help and you won't walk away. Because you'll remember that someone didn't walk away from you." The boy looked up at him, eyes huge. "Promise." Liam smiled. "Promise." That night, Liam told Marcus he wanted to expand Liam's law nationally, create a foundation, make sure no child fell through cracks the way he almost had. "That's ambitious," Marcus said. "Take years, decades maybe, I know." Marcus smiled in the darkness. "Good. Then you're ready." The Liam Carter Foundation launched in 2025. By 2033, the National Carter Child Protection Act had passed, mandatory response protocols for every state, funding for caseworkers, accountability measures that made it impossible to ignore reports about children at risk. At the White House signing ceremony, a reporter asked what Liam remembered most about the river. "The cold," he said. "My body telling me to let go, and deciding I wasn't going to." "Any regrets?" "No. That decision to hold on when everything said let go, that's who I am." In the years that followed, the dominoes continued to fall. 2028. Tyler Ashford served his 9th year of a 25-year sentence. He would eventually express genuine remorse, work with at-risk youth from prison, try to undo some fraction of the harm he'd caused. His letter to Liam remained unanswered, but Liam kept it. Sometimes redemption isn't about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about becoming different. 2031. Jonathan Pierce died in prison. Natural causes, no one attended his funeral. But his name became a cautionary tale in social work programs across the country. 2041. Richard Ashford never held office again, lost his congressional seat in the next election, became a lobbyist, made money, but never regained the power he'd once wielded to protect his son from consequences. 2048. Dr. Rachel Bennett retired after spending her final years volunteering at free clinics, telling everyone who would listen about the boy who taught her miracles were real. She would say until her dying day that meeting Liam Carter was the most important moment of her medical career. 2053. Marcus Stone passed away at 70. 2,000 Hells Angels attended his funeral. Largest gathering for a single member in club history. He was buried with his wife's photograph and a letter from Liam that read simply, "You kept your promise. Thank you for not letting go." Emma became a pediatric emergency physician, told young patients about her brother who held her above freezing water, taught her that miracles weren't magic, just ordinary people refusing to quit. Liam lived a long life, married, had children, never stopped wearing the medallion. On the day he died, his daughter found a note tucked inside his journal. "Don't let go. Whatever you're facing, whoever you're saving, don't let go. Miracles aren't magic. They're ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Be that person." The medallion now rests in the Smithsonian, an exhibit called Ordinary Heroes. Glass case in the center of the room. Soft lighting that makes the silver glow. The inscription beside it reads, "A reminder that family is not blood. It is the choice to never let go." Visitors pause. Some cry. Well, remember, a homeless boy who became a son, a biker who became a father, A moment in freezing water that changed 3 lives and reminded an entire nation what it means to refuse surrender. The last line of the exhibit, etched in bronze, contains the words that defined Liam Carter's entire existence. He who didn't let go. And beneath it, in smaller letters, a question for everyone who passes. When someone needs help and no one else is coming, will you be the one who refuses to let go? The answer, Liam would say, determines everything, not just who you save, but who you become. End.